Thank you very much, India. Thank you very much, everyone, also for joining our last webinar of the first semester of the year. And it is my pleasure to have two great speakers today, Yvette Becker from FMB and Berardina Tommasi from ETF. And we would start first with Yvette. Yvette is a policy advisor, as I say, at the national offices of the FMV. She's currently focused on working time reduction, and she will introduce us to some studies that they have conducted to understand how workers appreciate these type of policies in the Netherlands. So, Yvette, the floor is yours, and thanks for being with us.
Okay. Thank you. I guess everybody can see the slides.
Yep.
Perfect. As Jose mentioned, I work at the FNV. Just for the context, we represent quite a wide range of industries, and this also means that I'm working on different approaches when I talk to the about 4-day work week. And at the moment, I've focused on 6 collective bargaining agreements, of which 2 are in the finance sector, 1 in the government sector, 1 in the industry sector, and 2 in the healthcare sector, of which 1 is child daycare and the other 1 is for hospitals. And about hospitals, I will talk a little bit more today. There are, of course, a lot of argumentation why a 4-day work week is a good idea. But where we focus mostly on when we talk about hospitals is that we believe it will increase labor supply by reducing absenteeism, by making sure that people don't retire early because they can sustain the work. And also that we believe that part-time workers will work more hours. And we see that from a Belgium case because we also have a lot of part-time workers. And of course, there are also a lot of other benefits, but that's one I actually wanted to raise. Also for the context, we have the longest careers of all European Union residents. On average, we have a career of 44 years. But at the same time, our working week is maybe a little bit less in comparison to other countries. This is the average working time per week. And in general, you see that the most people are on a contract of 36 to 37 hours per week. And that also counts for the hospitals. What we see in the hospitals is that they are facing with a high turnover and staff shortages. Almost half of the healthcare employees leave the sector within 2 years, so that's huge. And there's also a negative trend how employees feel at work from an energy and vitality perspective. And employees of every generation indicate that they cannot sustain the work if it remains organized how it is now. Because of the benefits that we saw from other research about 4-day working week with a significant reduction in working hours, we believe that it has a really positive impact on health and well-being, less work-life conflicts, less dropout, burnout, sickness cases, and so on. And that has also been a reason for the FNV to launch a poll on introducing a 32-hour working week in hospitals. What we did is we sent out a questionnaire from the 4th until the 31st of March from this year, and 3,355 fully completed questionnaire. So that's where the results are based on. And I will now just give you a brief summary of the most important results, and we can talk a little bit more later on about this. What we've seen is that 86% sorry about this, of the respondents was very positive about working less for the same salary. But we also wanted to know where optimizations could be made to partially fund the reduced hours, because We can think it's a really good idea, but we also need to convince the employers to go along with it. What we saw is that more than half of the people said that there are tasks that they consider less important, like double administration or duplication of work in general, checklists, meetings, replenishing cards, and searching for materials were the examples which were mostly referred to. Also, they said that there are bottlenecks that have significant negative impact on personal or group productivity. There was frequently referred to staff shortages and understaffing combined with high absenteeism and excessive workload. You can feel the tension there with reducing the work hours per week. But as I said before, we believe that we can increase the labor supply by introducing the 4-day work week or the 32-hour work week. Also, we asked for the delegation of tasks, if that's possible. And also there, almost a third was, or more than a third was positive about that. They strikingly often said also that logistics department should be more involved by able to provide better support in areas such as cleaning beds or replenishing carts and cupboards, etc. And in terms of education and training, they say that it would be nice to know systems better so they can optimally use these systems and work more efficient. And also they wanted more time to map out work process because it seems that there are a lot of tasks that are duplicated or redundantly done. And that's actually just a waste of time for everybody. There are expectations from the respondents how they look at this. I will just highlight a few. One for me was important how they think about the effect on the quality of care. And the 81% said that they see a very positive or neutral effect on the quality of care, so that they don't expect a negative effect. Also, more than 80% expect a positive effect on attraction and retainment of colleagues and greater job satisfaction. And we also asked what model they prefer to, because I didn't mention it before, but there are a lot of part-time contracts already in the hospital sector. And what they said is that they usually want to work less hours and less days, more hours and less days, or the same hours and less days. And I can explain it a little bit more because sometimes they have 24 hours at a contract, but they need to be 5 days available. So what people do is that they will choose for a smaller contract so they have more control over their work and life balance. And we believe that the 4-day work week can be used as a tool to also explain or to solve that bottleneck, to just make sure that the range of where people need to be available will be lower. Also, we created a business case. It's actually based on the poll where we of course ask, okay, where do you think optimization is possible? Those 4 things are where the most people agreed on. We made a calculation that we say, okay, better coordination between departments. We expect if you work a full-time working week that you save 9 minutes a day. No, we did it for all those subjects. So we estimate if we use smarter working practices, we can save about 42 minutes per day. If we plot that to a full-time working week, we can say that you can finance 3.5 hours by working in a smarter way. Then you still need to pay half an hour per employee to make this work, but that's then 163.3 million. That's like a large sum of money. However, science actually say that if you can reduce the working time in a good way, you see also that the absenteeism decreases. So we said, okay, if the absenteeism is now 6.24%, what if we can bring it to the national average, which is 5.3, so less than 1% down, then we can save 168.5 million, and then you have a net positive balance of 23 million, because you need to go from 36 to 32 hours. And then we did not take all the other benefits into account. So it was actually quite a modest estimation, I think, because also, which was in the news in the Netherlands, I don't know, I don't think there are a lot of people here that speak Dutch, but it actually says that they, at the ICU in the city in the Netherlands, they reduced the number of registrations from 125 to 60 without people dying or that it has an impact on the work. And then they saved half an hour per healthcare worker per day. So that's why I think that 9% or 12 minutes, is not that bad of an estimation. So in conclusion, we saw that there is a strong desire from employees to enable the 4-day work week. The model which appeals most is working fewer days. And also we think that employers can also finance this in a quite a big way, and that it's also beneficial for them. And the most important thing is that I think let's just start. How work is organized now does not work. Remember that I told you that employees of every generation now indicate that they cannot sustain the work if it remains organized as it is now. So I believe the 32-hour week is the way forward. And the only way to find out if this is true to start experimenting with this. And that's also what our union leader thinks. So that's our biggest, inset, where we will just put effort into in the next season. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Yvette. That was definitely insightful and a very compelling case to advocate for the 4-day work week. In a similar topic, beyond the 4-day work week, we have Berardina Tommasi. She's a policy officer for dockers at the European Transport Workers Federation. She's currently engaged in developing regional policies to address the impact of automation on dock workers. So I think it's a great complementary talk in this day in which we are revisiting how unions are promoting, advocating work time reduction policies. So Berardina, without further ado, the floor is yours. Can you share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for this invitation. I hope I will be able to give you some interesting for you insights regarding the port sector, which is the sector I'm responsible for. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the ones who are not very familiar, maybe with the ETF. The ETF is the European Transport Workers Federation. We represent over 5 million transport workers in all the transport sectors. So we have members in the European member states, unions, of course, but also, I mean, not only just the member states per se, but also unions from all the countries from the European Economic Area, and also Central and Eastern European countries that are not yet members of the European Union. As you can see, we represent all the transport sectors. So from civil aviation to land transport with railways, road transport, urban public transport, and of course the maritime with seafarers, dock workers, fisheries, and inland waterways. The docker section is one of the sections in the ETF. We have at the moment 55 unions. We represent around 70,000 people, workers from all the European countries and beyond. Of course, in this case, the number of countries is 25 because, of course, it's just about countries that have access to the sea. and then seaports. And before going through the sector itself, when I was preparing this presentation, I was thinking about what are, for me at least, one of the main factors that led to working time reduction, which is a topic that has been discussed in the union movement since ever, because it's a great concern. Also because historically, we experienced working time reduction over years, over the decades, since the first industrial revolution, I think. But just to stay in the very last decades, I think one of the main factors have been, first of all, the Great Recession, the economical crisis from 2007 to 2009, but that had also consequences until 2013. And then more recently, the COVID-19 crisis. And I will focus more on digital transition because you will see in ports, one of the biggest concerns for the unions is automation. And the reduction of work time is strictly linked with this phenomena that we are witnessing in the port sector. All these factors somehow have something in common when we talk about working time reduction. Why? Because in the economic crisis from 2008, we noticed and we experienced, even in the following years, even with the recovery, that the average number of hours worked per worker decreased in a quite steady way. This is partly because any crisis, in this case it was an economic crisis, but any crisis is related, and we cannot do anything about it, with job losses in most cases. And so one of the mitigation measures that we have to avoid and to prevent job losses and to keep as many jobs as possible is to reduce the working time. So let as many people as possible work, but working less. This is roughly the principle. And somehow this is also what happened during the COVID crisis. The port sector is special in this sense also because they never stopped during the pandemic. Otherwise, the goods and medications couldn't reach us in our respective countries. So this is not this didn't happen in ports, but in general, we can say that with the COVID crisis, which is not only an economic crisis, but a pandemic, with all the problems that we unfortunately experienced, brought to some kind of reduction in working time for the same reasons. But what we noticed with COVID is that while the employment rate decreased by 1.5%, these are data that I got from Eurostat, the reduction of working hours decreased proportionally much more. So it means that on the being based on the same principle, probably the reduction of working hours is has a much more impact, because the objective is always to keep the employment rate as much good as possible during times of crisis. The digital transition that we are experiencing now, but started years and years ago, is something strictly related also to COVID-19, because in COVID-19 we had work time reduction, yes, but also a general change in working patterns, because it was not only economical crisis, which means that with all the difficulties brought by the pandemic, we also had to rethink, even from a union point of view, how work is performed, even from a physical point of view with the social distancing and so on. But the digital transition, and it applies, I think, also to the green transition, are not crises, are structural transformations, and are strictly related if we talk about, again, working time reduction. And of course, COVID crisis has prompted a powerful push towards increasing automation and digitalization. So in general, what is interesting, I think, to notice is that in all these crises, we experienced an acceleration of the decline of working hours. And this is already an interesting point, I think. And another interesting point is that every time that we experienced that, we didn't have any go back to normal, as we heard very often during COVID. So once that we experience the reduction of working time, then it's very difficult, almost impossible, to revert to pre-crisis levels, even during the recovery time. So somehow this is a kind of work redistribution that we are, as unions, we are hoping and we are seeking, because this is one of the ways through which we can deal with many different kind of changes. The digital transition, yes, economic crisis or pandemics, but also very simply the aging of the workforce. So reducing working time is proven to be a tool to deal with this phenomena. And in few words, basically the principle is more employment through the reduction of the working time. In ports, I said the situation is a bit different. First of all, because it's a work on shift, as many others, but ports never stop. They work 24/7. So the work is organized in 3 shifts, usually, of 8 hours. And in ports, what happened years and years ago, we're talking about 30 years ago, was the introduction of automation. So way before we started, for instance, at European level, talking about automation and digitalization, like over the last 5 years. This is something that we experienced in these sectors since 1993, when the first fully automated terminal was built in the port of Rotterdam. And there is, I think, and then we will get to working time reduction. There is also something that we have to bear in mind, which is the difference between automation and digitalization. Because with digitalization, you introduce changes in the way the work is performed and the way the information is used digitally. Automation means replacement of workers with machines. So as you can imagine, the concerns regarding job losses are have always been, since the very beginning, very serious. What is the position of the unions in this? Of course, there still are unions, workers, discussions where people still are reluctant regarding automation. I understand, we all understand, but the point is that unfortunately, all the unions can do is to try to be part of the change, to manage the change, but we cannot, we are not able to decide if we can go ahead with automation or we refuse it, because the process will continue and things will continue happening with or without us. So best way, in our opinion, is to have a role, first of all, try to make sure that the opportunities deriving from automation are maximized and the threats, job losses minimized. And most importantly, that also the workers can benefit from the introduction of automation and new technologies. So this is basically, very briefly, what could change, what is already changes from the point of view of the profile of the job profiles. As you can imagine, port work used to be very physical, still is. They are used to be in the waterfront, so exposed to weather conditions, shifts, night shifts. They drive vehicles, different kind of vehicles, cranes. So they lift weight, so it's very physical job, and they like it as it is. But with automation, what is happening already is that this shift towards a more screen-based job, less rotation between tasks, which means more repetitive kind of tasks. And this also poses issues from the point of view of health and safety, but also from the point of view of working time. When I talk about sharing the benefits, is exactly this. So if there are benefits coming from the introduction of automation, and this is not the place to discuss about this, but we also it's also proven that it's not always the case. Also in terms of productivity, it doesn't always happen that automated ports are more productive than the ones with real human workers. But when automation is in place and it works properly, then also the workers should have the right to benefit from some advantages. How? Reducing working time with no loss of pay is one of the most important tools in our view. Reducing overtime, trying to find early retirement schemes. So these kind of measures can effectively mitigate the impact of the automation in the sector. And this is why we talk about just transition. Again, the objective, given all the conditions that we already know, is to keep as many jobs as possible. So working time reduction schemes are the tools, probably also together with other tools that, in our view, should be explored. Like, for instance, the introduction of new forms of taxation for the machines that are used and that replace the workers. Because workers, let's not forget, are also taxpayers, are consumers, while the machines are not. So in order to pay for the services that we use, the public services as well, it's important to have workers or to make the machines pay for that when they replace them. The other tool, in our view, of course, from a union side, is collective bargaining. This is the main instrument through which we can shape the changes, not only in this kind of transition, but in general, regarding the reduction of working time. And this is what we proposed at European level. I must say, again, it's still a proposal, with the European Framework Agreement on Automation in Ports. It's a wide range of principles and rules that, in our view, should be applied when introducing automation. I will only focus on the ones on job security, which is already a big chapter. And I will show you briefly, just for your reference. We are not going through the text, of course, but for instance, in Article 6, about employment guarantees and job security, what we decided to put in written is the fact that automation potentially puts jobs at risk. that the levels of employment in principle should be maintained. And how? These are the measures. So reducing overtime, reducing working time with the same wage, even early part-time, especially for the workers. Again, dock work is very tough. So they already have in place some early retirement schemes. But also there could be an opportunity, especially for the senior ones that are less used also to new technology, to have early part-time working patterns when they are closer to their retirement time, or just simply a shift to part-time work. So these are, of course, very effective tools in our view. And we also have an article specifically on working time, where we say, first of all, that reducing the working hours should be a long-term goal, in this case, referred to automation and digitalization, but in general, in our view. And all the proposals regarding changes on working time patterns must be agreed, negotiated, and then agreed with the representative of the workers. So, and to conclude, what are the main points regarding the reduction of working time, and why should we go towards this goal? First of all, health and safety, because reducing working hours can reduce also work-related health issues. Gender equality, in the sense that a reduction in working time can lead to a better balance of the gender roles and responsibilities. And also, and automation does the same in this case, it's a pro. They can ensure that more women workers can stay in the labor market, which is quite important. And then employment, because we saw work redistribution should be used to counterbalance a bit the impact of digital transition and also green transition on the employment levels. So having shorter hours can create more jobs, or at least reduce the push towards unemployment. And I think this is it.
Thank you very much, Berardina. It was also very interesting to learn more about the maritime industry and how they perceive work time reduction. I want to ask our audience if there's any questions that you may have. Please, you can raise your hand. Yes, Joao, sorry.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you from Brussels. I'm a colleague of Bera, who I salute, by the way, for the presentation. It was very clear. I wanted to ask a couple of questions to see if I understood well. First to Yvette. So these were the outcomes of a survey that was done to hospitals, right? To hospital personnel. And I would like to know who exactly was this, who were these workers? What kind of workers were they? Were they nurses? This included doctors? This would be important for me to understand. And secondly, also to Yvette, there is in one of the slides that you presented, there is a mention of how it's in the conclusion slide of how this how reducing work time can be a factor of attractiveness to some sectors. And I would like to know a bit more about this and your reflections about this, because, for example, in Portugal, we have a big problem of hiring doctors to the public service because the privates are paying way more. And it would be very interesting to know if you have developed more ideas about this topic of attractiveness, either for the hospitals in general or for other sectors.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. The survey was sent out to everybody working in a hospital, so both in the can you say primary process and the secondary process? I don't know if that's if you know that term. We saw that there were only 3% doctors, but they are usually also not a member of us, so that's probably why that is. The biggest group were nurses. I did some cross analysis, but I did not see significant differences between the groups in how they responded on the survey. So that's why I did not split that. The other question was how we can make it more attractive, and that's I believe that you can have in the Netherlands, at least, it's quite hierarchical. The way they work. Doctors seem to be more important than nurses, and nurses seem to be more important than and I guess that the 32-hour work week is also a tool to create more autonomy for workers, because they get more in control and they need to think about the work process as well, because they have more a say in what you can change. I have an example from my friend, so NS1, but she worked as a nurse, then she went to the learning and development department, and then she had actually quite a lot of time where she had nothing to do, so she said, oh, can I also work partly as a nurse again? And then they said no, but we have shortages in nurses. There are also long meetings which don't really benefit the work. So that's actually how we want to have the conversation going, and that people have more time to spend at the patient and not using checklist and double administration. One more example which I give to you, which I came out from the survey, was that they have a different system in the ICU unit than the medium care unit. So they are administrating something at the ICU, and then they type it again in the medium care unit, which leads to information loss and a lot of time spent, which you should not spend. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question as well.
Yeah, my big point was how as the markets compete for workers, how, if you had any insights on how attractiveness can be an argument for unions, for example, to establish this in, I don't know, in CBAs or in company policies, because I see a big carrot here.
Yeah.
In many sectors, it can be a big carrot to fixate workers and to reinforce some workforce.
Yeah, that's definitely true. A few weeks ago, Avas, a big software company, so totally different sector, but was the first company in the Netherlands, a bigger company in the Netherlands, who introduced the 4-day work week. And they had in one day 125 applicants for open applicants. So there was not even a vacancy. So that actually says also something about attractiveness. And I have more data on attractiveness, which I can share with you later if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Becker. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Joao. Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm currently writing my final thesis on the 4-day work week. And I'm also a founding member of an initiative in Germany that campaigns for a reduction in working hours. So thank you for the insights. You both mentioned that care work could be better and more fairly distributed. In my work with the topic, I realized above all the fair distribution of care work is actually only possible if the daily working hours are reduced. Care is necessary every day, so yeah, I just want to know what you think about that. And besides that, to Zhao, I can highly recommend the British studies about the 4-day work week. Probably you know it. And they're also talking about it's brand new. It's from 2023. And yeah, they're talking a lot about how attractive jobs can be when work time is reduced. Yeah, so back to my question. What do you think about daily work time reduction or weekly work time reduction and the possibilities, the opportunities for a fair distribution of care work?
Yvette, you have the mic open, so would you like to go first and then Beta?
Yeah, I can start. First, before I forget, João, you could look at the South Cambridge study. They had also a lot about recruitment costs. So maybe that's also what Jessica is referring to. But yeah, and with regards to your question, Jessica, I think there are a lot of models possible, and you really should look at the context and what fits with the company or the sector. For example, if you have an industry or metal sector and you have shift work, you may find that other model is more suitable. But in general, if you have a choice, I would say go for a day off, an extra day off per week, because there you get the most out of the recovery. Because that's what we see now in the hospitals in the Netherlands. They have small contracts, but still need to go and work quite a lot of days in a week. And therefore, they still feel that there is a work-life conflict. So therefore, my preference would be, if you have the choice, go for a day less per week, but really look at the sector and the employees and employer, what is needed and what is possible, and also be creative in.
And Beta, what can you tell us about the dog workers? What type of model would that would be a good fit?
Yeah, it's as Yvette said, I totally agree with the fact that there are different models. From port workers' perspective, what I can tell you is that, again, it's a work on shift from Monday to Sunday. And this trend, these requests regarding working time reductions, but also, let me say, complain about working on the weekends, are coming from the younger ones. So probably because the first push in the port sector to try to put in place working time reduction, as I said, came from the introduction of new technologies of automation. But so it's not just a trend deriving also from other phenomena, but it's true that the new generations are also very they take the rest of their life, private life, their hobbies, leisure, family, very, very seriously. And that's why when we talk about attractiveness, when João mentioned attractiveness, port work somehow, for many reasons, is still very attractive because it's very regulated, wages are very good, but of course it's also very tough, and you have to work on shift. So what is making nowadays this sector less attractive to the youngest ones is exactly this. So I think we need, beyond automation, we need to find solutions also and new patterns regarding working time reductions not only because of new technologies, but because of the requests from the workers and to keep the sector attractive. Then from a very personal point of view, what I can tell you, if we have to choose from different models, I would go for a daily reduction, because sometimes we are not all as advanced as the Netherlands in this field, unfortunately. So we have potentially countries where you have a weekly hour time reduction. So you work 4 days, but then on those 4 days you have to work 10 hours per day because it's not properly regulated, for instance. And this really doesn't make sense to me. It's my personal view. But then it's true that there are so many models that it depends on, the kind of sector, if it's public or private also. It depends on the companies, on the shifts, when there are shifts. So you can have many answers.
Yeah, just to insert a very brief advertisement, this is actually, as India reminded us, a topic of discussion that will take place in our conference of work time reduction in October. So you are all more than invited. There is the link in the chat box. And yeah, that's precisely the topic, daily reduction in hours versus reduction in days. So thank you. Now we're going with India. India, you also have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. Thanks very much, Yvette and Berra. Really, really interesting presentations, much appreciated. I've got a question each for both of you. So Yvette, I was interested to know whether the business case that you presented with the kind of calculations of the different costs and benefits, whether that's been shared with any employers and if you've had any responses to that, kind of positive or negative. And Berra, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the kind of the employment structure, I guess, in port authorities. Like, do the employers tend to be port authorities? Do employers tend to be public sector or private sector? Kind of who, when you're doing negotiating, who are you kind of negotiating with in that context?
Well, to answer your first question, we did not share it with employers yet. They can find it on our website, but we will present it to our members in September, and then we also make a proposal on how to go forward with this. So I'm really curious how they will respond. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, India. Well, it's quite complicated also because every country is organized in a different way. But what I can tell you is that, first of all, we have the port authorities usually are the public entities that have to manage ports. In most cases, ports, like the land, is a public good. Okay, but then also in most cases, except for Spain, Italy somehow, and other few countries in Europe, there is a public-private partnership. Let's call it like this. So it's a mixed model where you have the port authorities who are responsible for safety, for other things, and manage this public good that is the port, the land where the ports are. But then you have private companies who are the ones who invest in the terminals, that build the terminals, that make investments, provide the machineries and everything. And usually the system is based on concessions. So the private companies pay a 30, 20, 40 years concessions to expand their business, basically. But if we talk about automation specifically, but in general, when we talk about CBAs, collective bargaining agreements, of course, the port authorities are involved, but it's with the companies. So if we talk about everything, working time reduction, I don't know, working time patterns, days off, whatever you can negotiate, you negotiate it with the private companies. If I answered your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
So is there any additional questions from our audience? If not, I would like to ask one last question, because one point that I saw of connection between the two presentations is how technology relates or enables working time reduction. I saw that, Yvette, you are proposing a smart use of technology, and even you are proposing automating some administrative tasks, which is interesting, right? Because Berardina was already mentioning how the benefits of technology should be distributed and how unions should try to negotiate that. And here in the sector, Yvette, where you are looking at work time reduction, it seems that you're moving forward, and you are the ones actually asking for the automation to make the work time reduction possible. Whereas in the port industry, it's a bit the other way around. First automation comes, and then the negotiation of how workers can also benefit from that automation takes place. So I would also like to have your own reflections on this topic. What's the best way in which we can make technology serve everyone, and not only the capital owners or the shareholders that extract most of the value of it? Particularly, when you hear about ChatGPT and all these new technologies coming up and also expanding to other industries, what do you think we can learn from this relation? So maybe we start with Yvette.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a really good question. It's also interesting to see the difference, but to have the same outcome, so to say. But in general, I think we should go for technology or social innovation agreements where you already beforehand talk about how new technology is affecting quality of work, employment, and everything, but that you make it a formal agreement together with don't know how that's called in the Workers' Council. Yeah, so and we already have done that at one company now in the Netherlands, but we try to push that for a little bit more, because as what Bera said, is that we cannot stop the technology. I also don't think we should need to want to stop it, but we need to make sure it's complementary, and if it's about automation, that employees benefit as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Yvette. Vera?
Yeah, complementary is the right word. So I totally agree again with Yvette. What I would say, for me, I mean, from a union point of view, the red line is the fact that the workers cannot pay for the introduction of new technologies, for the introduction of digitalization, for whatever change, including COVID-19 or other kind of crisis. So it cannot be everything on the shoulders of the workers. This is the point. So anything we can use to make sure that from any, how can I say, phenomena that we have or we will have in the future, and from any changes, we can have, workers can have also advantages, then it's fine. It's a matter of balance. It's true that you can see the same issue from different point of views. For us, as I said, the concept of reduction of working time was kind of a consequence of the introduction of automation, while in other sectors, as you had said, is the opposite. So the first demand from the workers is exactly that, working time reduction. And then the rest is a consequence. How can we implement it, and so on and so forth. But here, at least at the beginning, it was exactly the opposite. So the most important thing from my point of view is that we have to find ways. We cannot just simply oppose and reject changes, but then at that point, through the collective bargaining first, but also the lobbying activity that we do, for instance, at European level, there are many tools. For me, of course, the negotiations are the most important ones. But it's always around the same thing. Unions need to be able to understand the needs of the workers and put them and make like a step forward and ensure that their interests are not only represented but also respected, taking into account all the changes we have to deal with and we have to manage.
Definitely. It reminded me this book that was published recently. It's called The Machine, The Berardina Machine, and it revisits the story of the Luddites and how sometimes we depict them as workers who were against the technology itself. And certainly that was the mechanism in which they fought against the substitution of their jobs, but they were not fighting the technology. They were fighting the consequences that the capitalists say was inherent in the development of the Industrial Revolution. But at the end, it was a political fight as well, right? Like, how do you negotiate who benefits and who doesn't from these technological advancements? So I really like this conversation, and thank you very much, both of you, for being with us, for sharing your experiences. Also, thanks to the audience for being engaged in the conversation. Well, Margareta, just also thanks both of you from the chat box. And we will be in touch. We will send you an email to remind you about our conference happening in October. Everyone is invited, and hope to see you there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Nice holidays as well.
Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.